thank you for the introduction. Now, I'm sure you heard a lot of things about Roma. Yeah, better?
En mute-knapp på...
Is it better? No? Okay.
You can take mine. You can take mine.
No, I can take mine. Okay. So I'm sure you heard that these kind of stories about Roma are usually a mix of prejudice, of historic events, and sociological facts, because always you need to support your statement with some data, yeah? Either in favor of Roma or against Roma. The most common stories about Roma, I'm sure you heard them. Roma are poor or Roma are rich. Did you hear these stories? Roma are very rich, yeah? And they have big palaces and so on. Roma like to travel. It's like in their nature to travel. You heard this one, I'm sure. Roma get their children married in a very early age. Roma don't send their children to school. And there are some stories that describe Roma as parasites. They like to beg, they like to steal, they like to live on social welfare. At least this is a speech in Romania, most of these stories, but I'm sure these kind of stories are traveling all over Europe. Now, I'm not here to confirm these stories or to disagree with these stories, because we all need a story to believe in. All I'm here for is just to provide some data, to show you some realities, and to help you design your own story and design your own way of how do you think it's better to have Roma. Behind all this story, what is common? If you read a history book describing Roma in, I don't know, 15th, 16th century, and you look at the situation today, you can find certain similarities. Like Roma are not welcome in the city. Roma are always on the margins. There is a troubled relation between the city and the Roma. And the other part that is common seems to be poverty and discrimination. There is a big academic debate about what is Roma. I can very well pass as a non-Roma. I'm white. Yeah, I have a school degree. I have no problem. If I don't want to say I'm Roma, and if I want to be a hidden Roma, I can very well be that one, integrated into the society. But if I want to say I'm Roma, I have a problem. Roma don't really recognize me as a Roma. I'm not black, yeah. I'm not living in a traditional way. I'm not wearing traditional clothes. So there are some Roma saying, well, you might be Roma because you speak Romanes, but you are not 100% Roma. And there are the non-Roma saying, well, yes, you are integrated, you are here with us, we can talk to you, you are a pleasant company, but still you have some origin that you cannot forget. So it's kind of in the middle. Yeah. This is I'd like to start with this data. I don't think you can see them very well because I want to start this as a background of our discussion. Most of the data that I'm going to show you are from the latest report done by the World Bank in Romania, and it's based on the 2011 World Bank, EC, UNDP research in the region. So you see at risk of poverty, 84%, severe material deprivation, 90%. Households with very low work intensity, 44%, and this is the Roma neighboring on the right column. I don't know if you match these kind of figures in other countries in Europe, or refer to other kind of vulnerable group. But please keep this in mind while we are going to talk. First, what I'm going to do is just present briefly. I mean, it's very hard to talk in 30 minutes about different aspects. So what I'm going to do is just present some figures and some stories, and from here I hope we can start a dialogue virtually. About education, the first thing we should say about education is that education costs. Education in all societies, I mean, in Romania education is for free. But my own experience, I have a child that 2 years ago went to school. So I was very curious to see how much do I have to spend for the first days of school. Roughly it was 200 euros. Spent on training, equipment, shoes, notebooks, bag for going to school, blah, 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 blah. 200 euro is very close to the minimum wage in Romania. Romania doesn't have a very high unemployment rate, but has a very high degree of low wages. Another thing that we should say about education is that the system doesn't work very well. There are very good children that go out of the system and perform, but the system as a whole is not working very well. And what I mean by this? Children, we have many poor areas where the education level is very low, and the latest PISA tests showed this, that Romania is basically on the last place in Europe. The teachers, even if the children do not perform, the teachers have their interest to keep the children in school. Because if you don't have children in school, you lose your job. So it's my direct interest, even if the child does not perform, he must be in school. And this, the quality of education comes second. The number of children in the school comes first. And you have this impression also looking at the indicators. The indicators very rarely, show you the quality of education, show you what is the rate of school dropout, for example. What is the rate of children in school? It's okay with the numbers, children should be in school. But what happens in the system, you can see only later when you have high unemployment and how very low chances to get on the market. And there is also a lot of segregation in school. I'll have the figures here, I think. The idea is that inequalities in education come very early. 40% are undernourished, and their diet is very poor from the very beginning. This affects, of course, their intellectual and capacities. 90% of the children are born in severe material deprivation. What are the chances of a child that lives with another, let's say 5, 6, 7, 10 persons in a room that is, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 square meters? What is the chance of this child to learn, to do the homework, or to have some 5 minutes of quiet for concentrating on anything else? Only 37% of the children are enrolled in preschool education. And as you know, the preschool education is very important for further performance. At the ages of 16, 29% of Roma boys and 19% of Roma girls are still in school. Almost a quarter of them are segregated. Only 10% of adults have completed secondary school. And we go further with employment. My impression about employment in Romania is that there is a scarcity of solutions. There are many reasons why Roma do not and cannot really access a job. And the most important is lack of education, of a diploma, and also very important discrimination, which cannot be very easily documented. 2 days ago, I was in a penitentiary for young children. Because I should say that Roma are not the only vulnerable group in Romania. We have several. And one of the groups that we are starting to work with is young people, usually coming from this kind of poor settlement that I'm talking about, and that end up in jail. So I was having a discussion there and saying that in Romania there is no law saying that if you are out of jail, you shouldn't get a job. Normally you should get a job, but this never happens. Because as soon as you get this file in front of the employer, he would say, well, you've been in jail, I'm sorry. I cannot hide. So that's a fact. It's hard to work with this, but this happens. You can see the figures, 35% of formal employment, while it's 81 among the non-Roma neighbors. The earnings from employment are 101 euro. Regional disparities in employment. In Romania there are 3 regions with high disparities regarding employment and possibilities for employment. That is Central, South and Southeast. Other vulnerable categories, people over 40, that is also very difficult to get a job. Ex-convicts, people living in rural areas, and that is also a trouble for the researchers, because most of the people living in rural areas, they live day by day. They are not formally employed, but they manage to live somehow. According to this research, only 10% of Roma had a stable job in the last 2 years. I think that's very important. Health, I don't want to say too much about health, because if you think about poverty, if you think about terrible living conditions, you can easily deduct that health is also very bad. You can start with living conditions and then go to the TB incidence, which Romania is highest incidence, and Roma, the incidence among Roma is more than double than among the Romanians. Higher incidence of long-lasting chronic disease, reasons poverty, low education, low employment. And that one is very interesting. Over 55% reported one household member suffered from hunger in the last 2 months. And that was 2011, the research. Housing, it's a lot to say about housing, but it's we should start about the fact that Romania is a country of owners, has the highest percentage of home ownership, which is around 98%. So you don't really have a market of social housing. You don't have builders of social housing. The only entities that build social housing are Habitat for Humanity, probably you know about it, it's an NGO. So Christian organization that used to be like 10, 20 houses for Roma per year in the last years. And then, of course, you have the municipalities that build social housing, but the statistics there has been a research in Transylvania, and the statistics say that where there is a municipality with more social housing stock, the access of the Roma to this social housing stock is less. So the access of the Roma to the existing social housing stock is basically very, very, very high. What else? We don't even know where are the poor communities in Romania. We don't have a map. If you ask me, we want to do something for the poor, please show us a community. I know from my experience, my colleagues know from their experience, but if you're asking for a map, it doesn't exist. And these kind of communities are changing. There are many more coming on. Some of them also disappear. Some of these communities, entire communities, move to west. And you have practically a migration of the ghetto from Romania migrating to the west. We also have a legislation. By the way, our NGOs has initiated a law that wants to establish a full methodology and to establish this kind of map based on a research done by World Bank that was also involved in Romania, and hope to have this in the next years. The legislation on housing is also old and needs to be updated. We don't have segregation. You heard about segregation in Romania. We talk a lot about segregation in school because we have a legislation on this. We have actually a paragraph in the legislation. But if you want to talk about segregation in housing, you don't know what this is because we don't have a definition. EU, for the next funding period, 2014-2020, allows building houses. But of course, the condition is not to create segregation. But if Romania accesses this kind of funds, we don't have a definition, so they can build anywhere they want, saying that it's not segregated. And then I'm sure they will find some reasons for this. We should also say that there are communities that are 40 years old, for example, and people still don't have documentations on the land, property papers. This research, 30% of the Roma households are in a slum or a very bad condition. 17%, only 17% have sanitation indoors, and also drinking waters indoors. 36% reported irregular no-waste collection. Approximately 60% of households are more than 2 persons, which is a definition of crowdedness. Segregation old and new. As I said, there are historical places that are outside the city because that was the history. In some cases, the city expanded and incorporated these new settlements, and then the new segregation is done also by local authorities simply by building this kind of social housing, which is moving, for example, the Roma from the old historic center, where the living conditions are bad, to better living conditions, but outside the city. The discussion about migration is it's a hot one, and it's not easy. But to put it in a very simple terms, the economic, it is basically an economic migration. We don't have, I mean, the percentage of Roma traveling in Romania is very, very insignificant. It's not about traveling, it's about economic situation. You have people with low education who lost their jobs, even starting with 1990s, and who need to do something for earning their living. What I have selected for this presentation is a study done by a Romanian think tank with 500 Roma that are in 5 cities in France. It was an exploratory research saying that 53% no education, 35 primary education, 11% gymnasium and 1% other. 95% worked in the last months, but 94 of 95% worked on the black market. In France, 40% of them now they're living from metal collection, 30% seasonal or temporary jobs, like 1 day, 2 days, and then nothing. In Romania, what did they do in Romania? In Romania, they had no job, and 18% worked in agriculture. I don't know how it was. Yeah, the earnings in France were 561 euro, which is 40% of the minimum income in France. Out of these, 235 are sent to Romania. It was interesting to see the priorities. What do they spend their remittances on? First is for family, for keeping the family, yeah, for surviving basically. Then is children education. And that is like 2 months ago I was talking to a migrant family in Spain, in Pamplona. And at that moment they didn't have any job. And I asked them, what keeps you here? Why did you come here? Why don't you go back? And he said 2 reasons. First, here if I don't have a job, I can easily earn like 800, 900 euro per month. And not from illegal activities. He described his activities. It was not illegal. And the second most important thing was the children education, which comes as a thing. I mean, they know their children have a better future and better, they don't think about the future. They only think about the school, the education. Okay, the third is housing expenses. And then saving, health and debts. In Romania, they earn 100 euro, which is also 40% of the minimum income. The reasons for migration: better living conditions, lack of housing, and friends, family. As you all know, the pattern is to go wherever you have friends or family. The conclusions, and you know the experience of the French. You know that they sent them back to Romania, and the return percent was 81. So 81% came back to France. So this is not a solution. Sending them back, even paying them to stay there is not a solution. And for sure, you need to integrate. Actually, there is an older World Bank study, and there are more and more voices among the Roma civil society and academics saying that you have a lot of people, you have a young, very, very young population. I don't think I have included the numbers here. And in 40 years, the trend in Romania, as well as in the rest of Europe, is that the population will get older. So this is a very good source of people who will be employed and who will pay the pensions of the Romanians as other Europeans. Okay, just a little bit about discriminations and barrier to participation. If you are a Roma, 38% more likely to be poor, 30% reported discrimination when trying to buy or rent, 31% when looking for a formal job, housing discrimination. Actually, what I want to tell you is that the way discrimination works in Romania is not discrimination and is not like Hungary, it's not like other countries that are neighboring, where you heard about violences, you heard about killings, and you have heard about protests against Roma. No. Here the discrimination is more hidden, is more embedded somehow in the culture. We still teach, there are still parents saying that to their children, if they don't behave, then I'll send you to the gypsies. The gypsies will come and steal you. Yes. This is still what they teach. There is no other, there is no intercultural learning in school. My kid doesn't get to know what is a Roma from school, or what is a Armenian, or what is a Bulgarian or Hungarians. We have like a lot of Hungarians. This is not such a thing. And also you have public speech that is very, very prejudiced. And probably you heard in the press and everything. Okay, just a little bit about what we do. We work in a basically social inclusion, changing negative attitudes and promoting social active citizenship. This is our aim. Why Ferentar? This is a well-known place for criminality, drug, prostitution. Actually, we should talk about myth. There was a research saying what is the most dangerous place in Bucharest. Of course, it is Ferentar. The perception of the people is that, but if you look at the figures, if you look at the number of crimes, at the type of crimes, it's not in the first place. On the contrary, it has improved. But still, you know, in these kind of places, the prejudice reinforces the situation, the actual situation, and the actual situation is going back. It's a cycle somehow. Of course, you have poverty and you have limited access to services. In these kind of places, the debate, what is a Roma, or if you are Roma or not, comes on the second place. The major stigma is if you live in a ghetto or not. And the barrier between the ghetto and the people who are not living in the ghetto is not wider than this one. It's a street. On this side of the street it's a ghetto, on the other side it's not a ghetto. Because people say it's a ghetto. We don't have the ghetto definition or the slum definition yet in the Romanian legislation. There is a project and soon will be out identifying six types of poor communities. One of the type is ghetto. So when this comes out, this will help us a lot to better target the type of interventions that we address. Why education? Okay, we decided to go in this ghetto and start with education. For several reasons. We want to build a pilot, and we are doing this for the last 4 years. If you want to build a pilot, you should look at the situation elsewhere. Most of the times, in this kind of poor communities, the only public institution that is present in the community might be school. The hospital can be kilometers away, but school, there is most likely you have. And this, through education, we can reach better the parents, the community, the local authorities, you know. Everyone agrees with the education. If you talk about housing, it's a bit more difficult. Okay, one of our projects is Alternative Education Club, which is basically a space within the school where we intend to make the school more pleasant for the children. There are two types of activities. One